It was just announced that 41 out of 44 of the Indiana Fever games will be nationally televised. So this is great news not only for the Indiana Fever, but also for the WNBA, right? So why is everyone upset?
Do you remember when WNBA players were asking for networks to show their games? For years, they fought hard for visibility, media attention, and respect. Now, the Indiana Fever are getting 41 games broadcast nationally, and suddenly, it's an issue. The irony is hard to miss. The same people who pushed for more coverage are now upset by too much of it. But the facts speak for themselves. Games with Caitlyn Clark have broken viewership records, sold out arenas, and even caused venues to be changed.
I do not think a lot of people are understanding just how big that is. Nearly every single game of the Indiana Fever will be nationally broadcast.
So why is success now being seen as a betrayal? And here's something else that's wild. The same executives who used to ignore the WNBA are now scrambling to get the rights to air Fever games. It's not because they suddenly care about women's sports, it's all about business. And in business, it's all about the money.
I cannot remember a time that any other team in sports history, we're talking about NBA, we're talking about NFL, it is no secret that the Indiana Fever are by far the most popular team in the WNBA.
Here's exactly why networks are eager to air fewer games on national TV. When Indiana played Chicago last June, an impressive 3.3 million viewers tuned in. Just let that sink in for a moment. These numbers are higher than what many NBA regular season games get, and this wasn't a one-off or a fluke.
I'm so glad that we are finally I don't know if admitting it is the right word, but they're finally acting on it. And you guys, I'm happy that they're acting on it because this news is not only just good for the Indiana Fever and Indiana Fever fans, it is good for the entire WNBA.
The playoff game against Connecticut drew almost 3 million viewers. Then, the WNBA All-Star Game with Clark set a new record, pulling in 3.44 million viewers, making it the most-watched WNBA broadcast in ESPN's history. These aren't just great numbers for women's sports. They're numbers that are making executives rethink what's possible in basketball broadcasting.
Look at the highest viewed games. So with 3.3 million, it was the Indiana Fever versus the Chicago Sky on June 23rd. And then we had 2.97 million, and that was the Indiana Fever versus the Connecticut Sun, and that was during the playoffs. And then we also had with 3.44 million, that was the WNBA All-Star Game. And that was the most watched WNBA program in ESPN history.
What's really eye-opening is how the Fever took over the ratings. They had the top 4 most-watched regular season games of the entire year. The only broadcast that topped them was Game 5 of the finals, which didn't even feature the Fever. Let that sink in. A team that didn't make the championship round still brought in more viewers than nearly every other game in the league.
Game against the Chicago Sky, the home opener on ABC. The game against the New York Liberty, also on ABC. How about a Tuesday at 8 p.m. on ESPN against the New York Liberty? They are playing all of the teams in the WNBA also on national television.
Here's where it gets even more surprising. The Fever weren't even winning much. They were just an average team last season, but they still filled arenas and drew huge TV audiences. This completely breaks the idea that fans only watch successful teams. What's really happening is the power of a star. Fans want to see Caitlyn Clark play, win or lose.
They proved that all of last season with everyone against them, with everyone trying to diminish the wave that was happening, the Clarkonomics that were happening, the Caitlyn Clark effect that was happening.
Networks aren't making these decisions based on feelings or fairness. They're looking at the hard numbers. Viewership equals advertising dollars, and when executives see stats like these, it's clear. Broadcasting 41 out of 44 Fever games nationally isn't about favoritism. It's just good business. With millions of viewers demanding it, they can't afford not to air these games.
So when we talk about these networks that are picking up these games, I think a lot of people also don't realize these networks are choosing the games that they would like to have. These networks are not thinking about hurting feelings. These networks are thinking about how much money can we bring in for ourselves as well.
What we're seeing is the market reacting to consumer demand in real time. Networks aren't creating this shift. They're just following where the audience is already headed. and the data makes it crystal clear where that audience wants to be.
We have ABC, NBA TV, Prime Video, CBS, ESPN, 1, 2, 3, and as you can see, these games, May through September, there will be games on national TV.
These viewership patterns are completely changing what networks thought was possible for women's basketball. The ceiling has been broken, and now everyone's rushing to capitalize on it. That's why 41 Fever games will be nationally televised, an unprecedented move that's shaking things up.
I'm say it's common sense. I don't get it. I don't get the pushback, and I'm so happy that this is happening. This is something we should all be celebrating. We should be celebrating this, whether it was the Indiana Fever doing it, whether it was the New York Liberty doing it, whether it was the Phoenix Mercury doing it. I don't care what team. This is great news for women's basketball, period.
The television revolution is just the start. Teams are now changing the venues where games are played because of the Caitlyn Clark effect. Remember those smaller, 5,000-seat arenas that used to be the standard for the WNBA? They're not cutting it anymore. At least 6 WNBA teams have already announced they're moving games to arenas 3 times larger, just for when the Fever come to town. This isn't about adding a few more seats. They're leaving their usual home courts behind for massive venues to handle the flood of fans.
I also wanted to mention that a lot of these WNBA teams are moving venues when the Indiana Fever come to town. There have been 6 teams that have changed venues when the Indiana Fever come to play. All of these arenas are selling out.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Some team owners are trying to downplay what's really going on. Can you believe the Atlanta Dreams owner actually said they were moving to a bigger venue because of a scheduling conflict? Come on, the timing makes it pretty clear this is all about Clark. It's like someone with chocolate all over their face trying to claim they didn't eat the cookies.
It has to be something where, if it's pride, if it's ego, we talked about how the Atlanta Dream owner said that they were moving venues only because of a scheduling conflict. It wasn't because the Indiana Fever were coming in town, like they made up some weird excuse.
These teams that have always played in smaller arenas are now booking 15,000-seat venues for Fever games and acting like it's just a weird coincidence. What's happening is a strange situation where owners are rushing to cash in on Clark's popularity behind the scenes, but publicly downplaying her impact. They want the money, but don't want to admit why it's coming in.
So on top of the viewership numbers on television, you are also getting the in-attendance ticket sales for all of these games, not only at Gainbridge, because I've told you guys I've tried to buy tickets for the Fever games in Indiana and it's nearly impossible to get tickets that I want. Those are all sold out.
And getting tickets to see the Fever at home. Good luck with that. Indiana's home games are reportedly selling out faster than any team in league history. Fans who used to buy tickets without a problem are now finding it nearly impossible to get seats. The demand is absolutely unheard of.
And then every single road game is also sold out to the fact that they're having to move venues to arenas that hold 3 times the amount of people than the ones that they were playing in before. I would love to see it get to a point where every single team in the WNBA, if they have the resources for it, move their venue to a bigger venue when the Indiana Fever come in town.
You might be thinking this is all great news for the league. More fans, bigger venues, sold-out games, exactly what the WNBA has wanted for years. But strangely, some fans and even players are suggesting people should boycott watching Fever games. Can you believe that? It's the complete opposite of what would help the league grow. It's like finally getting the promotion you've been working toward for years and then asking to be demoted.
You truly have to get to a point. If you care about the growth of the game, if you don't care about the growth of the game, and you don't care about every other player in the WNBA, then don't change a thing. Keep it to the small arena. Don't change a thing. Don't promote that game. Boycott watching the Indiana Fever games. You are only doing that if you don't care about anyone else.
What these critics are missing is the most obvious benefit. When 15,000 fans show up instead of 5,000, that's 10,000 more people watching every player on both teams. Those 10,000 new fans could discover players they might have never seen before. They might come for Clark, but leave as fans of other stars they see sharing the court with her.
They play in these arenas where there are 15 to 20,000 people in the stands. They are in front of people that they haven't been in front of before. That is an opportunity for all of us fans to get to know all the players on the court, all of the players in the WNBA, to pick new favorite players, to pick other teams that we want to follow along.
This venue switching trend proves the Clark effect is 100% real. These teams are tripling their ticket revenue, yet they're trying to act like it's not because of her popularity. It's like watching a gold rush unfold in real time, with team owners scrambling to cash in while pretending they just happened to be in the neighborhood with a pickaxe.
Momentum is still going, and dare I say, the momentum seems to be even crazier than it was in year one. The Clark crazies, the Caitlyn Clark effect seems to be crazier than year one. More people are getting on board. More people are watching women's basketball. More people are watching women's college basketball. The momentum is here. Do not slow the momentum because of ego.
As teams rush to bigger venues and pocket the profits, a strange contradiction is unfolding behind the scenes. After years of pushing for national attention, some WNBA players and fans are now upset about actually getting what they asked for. It's like watching someone who's been dying of thirst finally reach water, only to argue about which cup they should drink from.
Broadcast. That is something that the WNBA players, WNBA media, WNBA fans have been begging for so many years. So many people have been saying the WNBA will grow if we just have more access to it, make the games available, put them in prime television spots, do all these things. Now it is happening, and it is happening with the Indiana Fever.